Sales managers come to me all the time and they say, Brian, my team, we're losing to status quo. That's the default. That's the natural progression of a complex sale. Do nothing, wait, delay. Let's look at it next quarter. Or maybe let's start over. Look at all the alternatives. Or maybe even worse, sometimes buy as little as possible. I guess they buy something. That's a good situation. Closing the complex sales solves this problem, teaches people to anticipate this, prevent it. And the problem is we're dealing too low. But it's not just calling high. It's putting together the process, the strategy to get the deal to move and keep moving and give the artifacts that each person needs to get the deal done. And, everybody's like, well, what's the secret, Brian? Well, it's a system. That's the secret. The problem is everyone tries a tactic, a single tactic, a tactic that helps, but doesn't seem to work. Certainly won't work every time. It might work once in a while. Go to b2brevenue.com. Sign up for closing the complex sale. And that's what we're going to be talking about today is large complex sales, 7-figure deals, competing against a competitor that's more entrenched, larger, overstaffed, and can do things that you can't do. But this person's still winning, still crushing them. And the key is to know when you can win and when it's a waste of time. I think you're really going to enjoy this interview. It's great to hear somebody who's just hyper-focused and had the luxury of when she first got into sales to have a mentor, somebody who showed her how these deals work. That's rare. I was lucky enough to have this in one of my first jobs, and it did make all the difference because what ended up happening is for the next several years, I didn't have this. I kind of had B-plus managers, maybe. And they were good, and they had some good experience, but they were more career-focused as opposed to deal-focused. So they didn't understand the larger complexities of a deal. They had their tricks. They didn't have a system. And that's what I built, was a system, a understanding of how companies buy and what is going to happen next. What is most likely to happen next and how to prevent it. Because once it happens, everybody says the same thing. I knew that was going to happen. Oh, really? If you knew it was going to happen, why did you let it happen? That's what I always used to say when I was a manager. Because all I ever heard was, I knew this was going to happen. Oh, really? Yeah? Well, now you tell us. But in the complex sale, these traps that we fall into, they're both classic and able to anticipate and can be prevented. Repair? Not so easy. Repairing a deal is really hard. Preventing a deal from going south, it's not that it's easy, but it's doable. And the problem is you have to do it before it happens. Because after it happens, you're in repair, and then you're like, well, how do I fix it now? It's kind of bent. It's kind of burnt. We can refurbish it, but it'll never be the same. You got to do prevention in the large complex sale. If you're in office hours, make sure you're checking them out. Make sure you're checking out the one-on-ones. There currently is a one-on-one in both courses for pretty much every situation, probably 3 to 5 of them. So if you get stuck and you want help immediately, just search the one-on-ones and the office hours for the one that fits the problem that you're facing right now. Let's get into the interview. I'll sum it up at the end. Hey, Naomi, welcome to the show. As a way of getting started, tell us about yourself.
Sure. So my name is Naomi, obviously. I work for a company called Juniper Networks in the UK. I've been there for just over 3 years now on the service provider side of the company. And I'm really enjoying it. I love pretty much every day of my job.
Pretty much every day.
Pretty much. I mean, I want to be honest. I don't love every second of my job. But I think 70% plus is a very healthy place to be, and I'm definitely within that remit. But I'm also very into family and making sure I have enough time with them as well. So it's good all around there.
Now, how'd you get into sales? You don't seem to have the typical background.
No, funnily enough, and I feel like a lot of people say this when it comes to IT sales in particular, but it wasn't something I necessarily sought out to do. I didn't scope the market and really set my eyes to this one job and try and make that happen. I just knew that I wanted to be an account manager. So I knew I wanted to have a base of accounts and customers and build a relationship. I just honestly didn't even think, hey, sales is there. And then when the opportunity came around, I actually didn't even look at it as a sales role. And then when they gave me my number, my target, I realized it was very much a sales role.
That's the moment people realize it.
Yeah, exactly.
I always remember, like, at the beginning of the year, everybody's all professional and laid back and it was strategic. And then, March comes and everybody panics. It's like
completely.
And how do you like it?
I love it. I mean, the amount of change that happens, not only within the industry, but the company I work for in particular, feels as if you're constantly changing your role, whether it's a different remit based on target market, a different team, a different manager. It's just so busy that if you miss a couple of days, you're probably coming back to a different dynamic. So I just love the fact it gives me the ability to constantly upskill. And I love the flexibility. It really does feel like you have a mini business and you are almost the puppet master of each different dynamic to get to your goal. And I'm a bit OCD, so I love that element.
And I mean, that's a very technical market, because I went from selling software to start selling network gear. So it was like 80% software, 10 or 20% hardware.
Yeah.
But there's a lot to it, isn't there?
It's a huge amount. There's so much learning. It's impossible to know everything we sell. And I'm not sure everyone would love to hear that in the company, but there's so many different avenues and different topics to learn that you're never bored. Because if you've ever got spare time, you've got something to do. Right.
Because what people outside of technology doesn't realize is that people talk in acronyms in technology and fast. So it's like a new language because you got to parse the algorithm, hash it in your mind. What does that mean? Is it something I know or something I don't know?
Completely. I think in the beginning, what I used to do is I would be on a call, or a face-to-face is harder because you're obviously face-to-face, and I would quickly write down all the acronyms, search it, get a quick Google understanding what it means, and then comment. But then it becomes second nature, and you realize you're using acronyms in places you probably shouldn't be because people don't know what it means. Right. It is the industry, and you can't avoid it.
And what's the hardest part of your job?
Oh, it's a good question. I think the hardest part is when you feel like you're doing everything right, but the results either aren't there or they're not there quick enough.
Yeah.
And I think that's almost not just a professional state, but it's an emotional state as well, where you've got this connection with the customer, you're having the weekly meetings or whatever you need, and then you sit on your forecast call and you have to explain why the time frame your company has is not your time frame from the customer. And that's probably the hardest thing. And it's a daily, if not weekly, task.
Well, that's it, because management thinks it should take a lot less time than it does, don't they?
But every time you just think, should I mention the opportunity this week or should I wait 3 weeks?
3 weeks. Trust me.
Always 3 weeks. But yeah, I get it though. It's the nature of the job. So if that's not for you, you just don't do the job. And that's as simple as you can put it.
And who's typically your point of contact? Is it on the network operations side or?
Yeah, it's for me, I always try the highest level I can get. So I always go for that C-level exec relationship. And if I get battered down, I get battered down. But sometimes it's actually harder. Well, I found it's harder for me, at least. If you develop that mid-range relationship with an engineer or a head of department, because you grow such a strong relationship, going over their heads is often detrimental to the whole cycle. So if at least I start top-wise and go down, then I've done as much as I can and I land where I can.
Yeah. Yeah. Because that is a classic trap. It's what I call going steady with one person within the account. They
Yeah.
feel, I don't know whether it's a subconscious thing or what,
Yeah.
but if you've already had a conversation with somebody above them,
Yeah.
it's okay.
It's true. It's true. And it's almost like the last person you want to offend is your champion, right? And
Right.
if they're not on your side, it's just a shame.
Yeah. And who in the C-suite? Is it CIO?
It's mainly CTO.
CTO.
In the service provider market, it does seem like the CTO holds not only the technical but the commercials. So it might be the mid-range type of accounts that I manage, but it is pretty much always the CTO signing off that last little bit piece of paper that you need.
Yeah. I mean, because Juniper's well known, but is your whole territory existing customers or is it greenfield?
Good question. If you ask my manager, he'll probably say existing. But to be honest, it's a mix. I mean, I don't do a territory-based model. I have a set of managed accounts. So the maximum accounts I have in one given time is about 30 accounts. And the majority are existing at some point of time.
Right.
But that could be about 6-7 years ago. So for me, I take that as net new because you've got a new team. They don't even remember what kit they've bought. And it really is a new engagement if you've not engaged in 7 years. So yeah, it's a mix.
Yeah, because that's it. They could have bought something a long time ago. They're not using it, right? They don't know why they bought it or who's using it or why they needed it.
Yeah.
And
for sure.
and it's a hyper competitive space too, isn't it?
It is super competitive. I mean, I actually think it's done great things for my own ability to not get offended and my ability to just almost have a blocker when certain industry names are mentioned, because I'm never going to have a customer call where they are 100% just buying us, ever. So it's just second nature. And once you get in that zone of accepting the fact Juniper's not the answer to absolutely everything that a customer is looking for, then it becomes a lot more of a trusted advisor type of relationship rather than I'm pushing everything to you.
And how do you differentiate yourself, as a rep? Because you're probably not, a network PhD, right?
No. Yes. So another good question. Each account manager at Juniper, and most of our competitors, are aligned with the systems engineer. So funnily enough, even though we're customer facing and that's our job, one of the biggest things and most important things for me when we were aligned was that relationship internally. So I wanted myself and the engineer to be so close that we can pick up on each other's, downfalls and what's our strengths and dig in that way. And I think really, without sounding too not modest, that really is something that we've been leaning on for the past year and a half, developing that co-relationship with the customer where the calls aren't just problems and they're proactive calls, and it's looking to the future rather than, what ticket do you have open now and how can we solve it? So I think that is the main thing, always looking future-wise, never just what are they trying to solve right this second.
Yeah. And how do you stay out of kind of that commodity trap? Because when people are buying, they always want to treat the product like a commodity.
Yeah. I mean, I get what you mean. Industry-wise, but specifically the shift at Juniper in the last, I would say, year for sure, is moving from this, what does the technology do, to the business outcome side, and really understanding that in the vertical market rather than just what we do, I think has been the most beneficial thing. So being able to show and display TCO costs rather than saying, oh, speeds and feeds here are going to tick your checkbox there. And that's really how I focus. And coming to your point earlier about, I didn't do a tech degree. I didn't do an MBA. I didn't do any of these things. So I need to look at what can I confidently help them with. And that's all around the outcomes and not around what are they plugging in.
Yeah. And is there a proof of concept stage typically where they, yeah.
Yeah. There is, but it depends, because some service providers really trust Juniper because our heritage is SP for the last 5 years.
Yeah.
So there is a great name and legacy that we fortunately are able to lean on slightly, but the majority of the time we get to this proof of concept stage. We have got a fantastic team in Amsterdam and Sunnyvale that helps us there. So without them, no way would we be able to be as successful as we are with proof of concepts. But I love the opportunity to do proof of concept because it just takes away the conversation to the proof. And that's, for me, the best bit.
And how do you kind of lock out your competition? Because, you know, it's typically like a beauty contest sale sometimes, right? Yeah. They bring you and 3 other, and there's always the do nothing alternative. Yes. Or do it later or do less.
Yeah. I mean, I always welcome it, actually. I think if a customer's not bringing competition to the table, they're just not telling you.
Not serious.
Yeah, either they're not serious or they're doing it and they don't trust you enough to let you know it's happening. So I think when competition is brought to the table, you're able to really see who are you up against, what can we do that they can't do, and how can we chime in on specifically that aspect and then mitigate the things we might not be able to do. And you know, there's always another thing you can bring in as an interim to cover that gap. But I think it's just about not stressing out the fact there's competition involved, really taking the time to not just look at the commercials of what's that end number, but look at the whole story around it and then figure out how are we going to really compete to win.
Yeah. And how do you keep both the technical sale and the business sale moving kind of simultaneously without either one stopping the other or one overtaking the other?
Yeah, so this is actually the biggest lesson I learned year 1 of sales. And that was George, who's the systems engineer I work with, being on every single call together. And just imagine how crazy our diaries were, because if it was a commercial call, George would be on it. If it was a technical call, I'd be on it. So moving forward, it just wasn't scaling. So I think the most successful way we found that's worked is always divide the conversation. Yeah. So if we're on a joint call and something technical comes up during a commercial discussion that I'm leading, I'll steer the way to remain on the commercial point. And then it's also, let's not be on each other's calls. Like, I don't want to be on your calls when you're having the technical call, and you don't want to be on mine. So we totally divide that. And what's great about that is that George has this ultimate advisor status, and it's a properly holistic customer first view. And then I don't mind taking some of the pushback and the abuse. I'll take it. I don't mind. But as long as he's got that status, that's perfect for me.
Yeah. And how do you differentiate from a business standpoint? Because let's say, you know, you marginally win the technical win, the beauty contest.
Yeah.
But you're more expensive, or the terms are different or less attractive.
Yeah, I think what's great about, and this is me slightly leaning on the name of Juniper, is that we have the ability of a huge company, because we are a huge company, but we treat each customer as if we're a startup. And that really means every single point of that customer's journey, we're all over it. So it's post-sale. If that sale's gone and there's actually no revenue for us for the rest of the year, we still treat them as if there's like $1 million order next quarter. And just from my feedback from customers, that's not the experience they have with other vendors. And I'm going to take their word for it. I can't say it's 100% the truth, but so far that's what I've been hearing. So just trying to always push on understanding that it's their baby, and anything we can do to help is what we want to do.
So you see how you sell as a competitive advantage.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I mean, sometimes I don't know if it's just making us feel good, but the stories I hear of interactions blow my mind. And I think the management at Juniper are so in touch and realistic that you're almost working for them. I mean, you are working for them, but you want to work for them. Yeah. So if you've got an unhappy customer, the last thing you want is an escalation. And I feel as if it's such a tight-knit community internally that the only way to make sure everyone's happy, we're all good, is be a bit different in how we treat our customers and make it a lot more of a relationship than a one-point sale.
Yeah, because on the software side, I always noticed that because the big portfolio companies would copy their sales models of the bigger companies. And it was like, no, that's not what they're good at. They're good because they're big. They're not good because they sell well.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's the name, right? Sometimes the swear word of Cisco, but you always hear this saying, you know, no one gets fired for buying Cisco. No one gets this if they go for Cisco. And it's true. If you go and buy Cisco and there's a massive outage, no one's going, it's Cisco. Right. There's just a problem.
It's going to be you.
Exactly. So if someone buys Juniper and it doesn't go well, that person is like up for scrutiny.
Yeah.
And we never want our customers to be in that situation. Just as an example, obviously without mentioning customer name, there was something our champion in the account completely missed in what he was asking us to do. And when I was going through the proposal at the end, and it was about 2 days pre-PO, and bear in mind we were waiting for this PO for 12 plus months. So I thought to myself, I've just realized a huge thing he's not asked us for. Do I tell him and help him? Because internally, if he gets found out to not have added that, he's probably fired. Or do I just shut my mouth because it's the end of quarter, I need to get my number and it's in commit? And I sat there and I remember it was 9 p.m. on a Thursday night. And I thought, I need to call him because my heart can't take it. So I called him and I just told him everything. And the delta of what this actual revenue implication was about 350K. Yeah. So that's not something you can just like slip in. You just can't. And I remember that night spending the whole evening creating like a payment plan, which drips in over the next 2 years, where no one's ever going to realize that was missed out. And I just don't know if larger companies would go for it because they don't need to. They can just rely on their name. So yeah, I love it. I love Juniper.
Yeah. And what were kind of some of the stages you developed as a rep? Like, I'm sure when you first started, you felt like a fish out of water.
Yeah. Wow. Well, when I first started, I went straight into shadowing a major account manager who was the most incredible sales manager that I've seen actually all this time, but I didn't realize it day one. So I learned so much from him, and working with him for a year created almost the foundation of process, admin, talking to people, how to get stuff done. Then the second year, I got moved into a different team on the enterprise side of Juniper. And literally day one was just given a set of accounts and they said to me, you've got two options. Either you take these set of accounts and you work hand in hand with someone and like give you a joint target, all these different things, or we give you the set of accounts and you sink or swim. And I just thought, I'll take the set of accounts and I'll sink or swim, because if I'm gonna swim, I want all the money. I want all the target. I want all my SA. I want everything. And if I sink, but at least I tried. So that was my second year of learning how to do the job, and it was the best year. I think we got to like 250% of target. George and I had the best year ever. And now this year, third year in, again, new set of accounts. They've asked me to add a vertical to my previous, and I'm kind of in that stage again of how do you want to run this? So it's another opportunity. So I'm looking forward.
Yeah. And what motivates you? You seem the independence, the success, the progress, the risk?
It's, you know what? It's all of those. Yeah. I love winning. That feeling of knowing something's coming in, knowing you made that happen is just the absolute best feeling in the world.
Yeah.
And I love the feeling of being in an issue and then coming out of that issue. So I almost get excited when problems come up because I'm thinking, this is great, because once I'm out, it's going to feel great. So it's all around that feeling of moving to the next stage. What else can I do here? What other job can I get? Not outside of Juniper, but internally even.
Right.
So it's that constant like forward looking, how can I get better? And that really motivates me hugely.
And what is it about winning? Is it beating the competition? Is it doing a great job? Is it the success that comes with winning?
Yeah, I think it's a lot to do around the opportunity post-winning that I find the most rewarding, because you win an account or you win an opportunity and then just suddenly 5 other things are open to you because you're now that person that won that difficult opportunity. Or you even self-confidence, you feel so much better and ready to go into battle. And each time those little things happen, I feel like I'm just growing and growing, which, for sure motivates me daily.
So it's the building up, because it is good.
Yeah.
You win an account and all of a sudden now it just snowballs.
Yeah, exactly. And coming back to the small business type of dynamic, what I really like there is that it's kind of like you've got the salesperson in the middle, then you've got all these other teams that don't directly get your number, but if you get your number, they're in a good place. Yeah. And that feeling, knowing that if I close this, all the teams that help them, because we can't do anything without all of them, they're all getting paid. And that feeling of like everyone being jointly happy is amazing. I love that.
Yeah. And what kind of mistakes or counterintuitive things did you learn along the way?
I think when you rushing, even it can be the most minute, rushing to read an email, misunderstanding what the action is and spending a day on something you're not meant to be spending a day on. So I'd say that. And I would also say when a customer challenges you, coming back to the competition thing with, well, if we can't get to this price or if we can't do this by tomorrow, we're going to look at Cisco. That used to scare me so much because I didn't want to be the person to sit on that forecast call and go, we lost this to Cisco, because I wasn't able to turn something around. So it's learning that when that comes up, don't rush. Don't rush, because this is a huge, huge investment for that customer. So they're not rushing. So I'm not going to rush. I'm going to get it right. So I think the mistake there is that I used to rush and I used to try do everything they need, and we would come out on, the back foot almost. So yeah, for sure that.
Yeah. How about as far as the complexity? I'm sure your deals are pretty big.
Yeah.
6-7 figures.
Yeah. I mean, average deal is 1 million up.
Okay.
Depending
right.
where they are. But then you also get the deals that either are run rate or very small requirements that are 50 or 100K.
Yeah. So to get that piece of paper through a big organization is not an easy task.
No.
It's an art in and of itself. And people who've never done it think it's just, you email them a quote and you refresh your email and I did my part.
I mean, the biggest chaser I get is, have you got the quote yet? And I sometimes think to myself, I'm going to send you the quote. Like, I swear, as soon as I get the quote, I will send it to you. But that I constantly get chased. And reason being is, it's almost that the bigger the organization, the longer these type of things take, the more approvals there are. And all of it is done for a reason. And I think you only realize that specific reason when you need that reason. When you don't, it just seems like delay on delay on delay. And I think it's just about embracing the fact we've learned so much and we've created a system that requires all that complexity, I guess, but not getting bogged down by it and stressing out because there's nothing you can do about it, and just understanding what can I influence and what can I not.
Yeah. And where do you see yourself taking your career? You want to stay an
I,
individual contributor, or?
yeah, so I think I like the feeling of hitting my individual target and being able to completely frankly earn more. I think it's very well known that individual contributors mostly earn more than that manager or even the ability to earn more, because I'm in charge of my own earning. And I think as a manager, of course, you're in charge of it, but only to a certain degree. But in the future, I definitely want to go to a managerial role. I absolutely love taking the leadership role within sub teams, and I want to go down that route, but just not yet.
Yeah. And when you're looking at a deal, do you have a sense of when you're winning and when you're losing? What are the signals that you look for?
Yeah. I mean, I think firstly, it's all about the honesty that you're getting from a customer and really looking at them and thinking, are they telling me the truth or are they not? Yeah. And sometimes when you get contradicting information each week, that makes no sense to any normal sales cycle. You automatically know there's someone else that's closer to your buyer, and potentially no bidding might even be the best option. That is actually another thing that I probably learned, when to no bid. But yeah, so I would say understanding the truthfulness from your customer is definitely one. And then I would say we've got a very tight sales methodology, which was introduced last year, which has titles of each different pain point and each different consideration that you should think about when you're talking to your customer. So if I say to my customer, what is the impact of you not doing this? And they can't answer me, then that just tells me that's not a project that is either burning or on the roadmap, because there's no need, there's no compelling event. So if my customer can't tell me 2 or 3 reasons they really need to do this, I would take that as a sign of they might not really need to do this.
Right. They're window shopping. They're like, let's see what's new out there.
Definitely. I mean, and you know what? I don't blame them. In that career, you need to know what the market's doing. So if you can catch and latch on to an account manager in SE who's going to constantly resource research methods for you, then why not? But yeah, when you've got a number, you've got to look out for these things and understand where you're wasting resource.
And how about as far as, I think we talked about the winning and the losing. Do you run into that a lot, where you're kind of just there as column B?
I think we know very early on when we're column B. Yeah. And one of the largest deals that we've closed this year, we were column B and we are column B, but we won because it's dual vendor. So it's not the worst thing to be column B. I don't think it is. I just think, how can you prove as column B that you are still worthy? And when we do lose, it does suck, and no one can take that away. As much as we want to be diplomatic about it, it sucks. You've used all your time, your resource, you have to go to explain it to everyone, but there's so much to learn that it allows you to not lose the next time, or pull out way before you know you're going to lose, and spend your time where you should be.
Yeah. And so now, do you hate to lose? I mean, because I heard the love to win, but some people hate to lose so much that it drives them more than the love to win.
I, to be honest, I don't hate to lose. I don't, because
you're okay with it. Yeah.
I understand. I think I most of the time know when I'm going to lose, and I already know the reasons. So for me, if I've looked at those reasons and I was able to mitigate them, but it still didn't work, it's not necessarily a loss. It's just, it didn't fit and it wasn't right. And when you ultimately lose, blindsided, you get an email saying you're out, that's when I'd worry. I haven't got one of those, but the day I get one of those, that's when I'll be really, really annoyed.
Yeah. And are people professional enough to let you know, or do they just ghost you?
Good question. I think, no, I haven't had anyone ghost. I haven't had that situation of, I need to know an update of if we won or lost, because usually the complexity of the deal is you're either talking every day, or they need you for something. So Yeah, so it's hard to see it as a ghosting because it's not necessarily volume sales and we just can't get hold of the buyer. It's a very long process that if you want to ghost someone after 9 months, there's something seriously wrong.
Right. They just kind of drift away, or you're
Yeah,
getting the signals that you're no longer
yeah,
special.
yeah, definitely. I mean, what I try to do is with every like complex project I have is have a weekly catch up with the customer
Yes.
in the diary where the agenda item in the invite is update on project, and there's no fluffing around it, and it will literally be what is the update, and
Yeah.
if there's ever a time I don't get that update, alarm bells are screaming.
Yes.
So
That's
that's right.
smart. Yeah. Cool. Great.
It's much better.
Hey, it's been a fun conversation. Where can people go to follow you and connect with you?
LinkedIn is probably best. I should have put my LinkedIn background actually, which has a barcode. But yeah, LinkedIn, I'm available. Reach out. I love seeing different articles and stories. So yeah, would be great.
I hope what you're learning from these interviews is that it's all types of people are very successful with the complex sale. It's not just the hyper energetic or the super smart or the incredibly charming. It is kind of a mix. It's a unique recipe that each person has. And they all seem to have a process, a system, an understanding of the terrain, a hard-earned perspective that they apply to each deal. And it's not a gimmick. I know everyone's on LinkedIn and they're looking for the gimmick. Give me the 1 or 2 minute trick, the subject line, the call to action. When do I talk about price? All of these things should be talked about, but they're tactics. And they're applicable, but in and of themselves, marginally valuable. They're not worthless. They are worth something. And you should think about all of them. But if you don't develop a system, if you don't analyze your process, if you don't look at your game from the outside in consistently, you're not going to become great. You're going to keep finding or fighting to find the next shiny object in sales. And it's hard to avoid. The new book, the new technique, the new trick. There's a new one every day. And they're not bad. And they might match what you're doing. And you should maybe try them. But at the end of the day, you have to have your system, your recipe book that is unique to you, your style, your skill set, and your clients. And have a way of thinking through it. And what we get out of the courses is a way to step back from what you're doing, see how other people are doing it, get feedback on what you're thinking, talk through it with other people, and gain a vantage point that may take 5 or 10 years to get, but you get it in a very short period of time. It's all about becoming great at sales. And how do you do it? Is your manager doing it for you? They're busy. They got their own lives. Being a frontline sales manager, I've been there. It's not an easy job. And, you can hate them, but you got to understand they're between a rock and a hard place. They're between you guys and their manager. And as you go up in an organization, people forget how hard it is. Trust me. I've been at most of the levels. I've been on a board. I've been an advisor. I've been that trainer guy, consultant that's brought in, and all the reps say, no, nothing will work whatsoever. And been told to find a way to make it work. And what's good about the courses is that nobody joins them because they're selling something that's easy. Everyone in there has got the hardest of the hard. So when people raise questions, it's not obvious. It's counterintuitive and a lot of times what will work. It takes practice and creativity. And I don't have the silver bullet, but I have a silver system, a system that has worked in pretty much any B2B domain. Because you know what's on the other end of the phone and the email? It's a mammal. And I know how to get the response that I want from that mammal. Mammals don't think. They react. Just look at the comments on anybody's post on LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube. There's no thinking going on there. It's 100% reaction. Look at the media. Are they trying to inform you, deliver news to you? No, they're trying to get a reaction out of you. And the reaction is for you to watch them. In sales, we've got to understand, how do we get each reaction at each step and keep this chain of actions moving in the direction that we want? It's not manipulative. It's intelligent. Because what we're taught is to pitch. We're taught to build a value proposition. We're taught to bring insights, personalization, and relevance. And they're all good, but they don't work. They don't get the response that we want, because no one's sitting around waiting for a commercial. Do you sit down at night and go, hey, you want to watch some commercials? No. When the commercial comes on, you fast forward. You pause, you go to the bathroom, and then you come back and you fast forward. We do anything to avoid a commercial. Why? Because we don't care about the commercial. It's not talking with us, it's talking to us. It's pushing something down our throat that we have zero interest in. We did not opt in for the commercial. And this is what salespeople need to understand. So what do? You start where people are and you build up about them. And this is a skill. It's a talent. It's an ability. And it's not knowledge. Yes, I can tell you all about it, but you have to practice it. You have to see how other people are doing it. You have to dabble in it and develop it. Because is it a complex skill? No, but it's a different skill. It's a new skill. It's something you probably haven't been doing much of because you've been taught something very different, and its effectiveness is going to zero very fast because everyone is doing it. So what skill would drive your income more than having conversations with your ideal customer profile? Now, these can turn into sales conversations, but you can't start there because they're not there. They're not in market. Your inbound leads are that they've searched you out. They've shown some interest, some intent. And for them, it might make sense to start there. But a cold person, you have to start where they are and build up. So go to b2brevenue.com. The letter B, the number 2, the letter B, and my favorite word in the whole world, revenue. Revenue.com. And check out the course to see if they make sense for you. The perfect match is somebody in B2B who wants to make money, who's willing to commit at least an hour a week and a little bit of money, and wants to become better, isn't cheap, is willing to invest in themselves, knowing that you are the highest ROI of anything, bigger than Bitcoin, bigger than Tesla, bigger than anything else, bigger than real estate. You could double your income, and that compounds every year for the rest of your career. But you have to make that investment. Nobody can do it for you. Nobody can shove anything in your head or whip you to do the right thing. You have to do it. You own the keys to that little engine in your head. Turn the key. No one else can. So if you want to do that, or you can stick on your confirmation bias. I know everything. I'm a genius. I've been doing this 400,000 years, and what worked for me yesterday works for me today. Does it still work? Look at your paycheck. You tell me if it works. Look at your calendar. How many net new conversations did you have? Not inbound, not through your network. Net new outbound conversations, not inbound leads. What I'm hearing is the number 0. 0 or 1, maybe 2, if somebody's got full time to do it. But what if it was 20 or more, or 10? Even 5 is 500% improvement. What would that do to your income, your paycheck? Something nice maybe. What would it do for your life? Something nice maybe. It might be worth it. Hey, if you see my stuff on LinkedIn, give it a like, comment, and share. These are put up on YouTube as well if you're a YouTuber. Tell a friend about the show. I appreciate that. Thanks for listening. Make sure you check out the other 2 podcasts, Sales Questions, Brutally Honest Answers, and the B2B Revenue Leadership Show.